amazingly good or amazingly bad. So many people have something wonderful drop in their laps, and they will self-destructively destroy themselves to sabotage it, not believing that they could be successful. Plans for mass graves confirmed. Government surveying cemetery readiness for flu outbreak. His article needs to get people concerned so that we can have a debate about this and hopefully stop whatever's coming, or at least be individually prepared for it. Because it's not my job to scare you, but when something is scary, it's not my job to say, is FEMA preparing for a pandemic? Question mark. Federal agency seeks 40-yard dumpsters for biomedical waste disposal during emergency. Well, I mean, they're preparing mass graves. They're preparing forced inoculations. They're preparing under InfoWARS, lockdowns, under clergy response teams. The church is saying, take your inoculations, go to the campus of the Lord. That's on the news. They're expanding across the board, and their main mission is letting the foreign globalist offshore crime syndicate take over this country. But here it is. Plans for mass graves confirmed. Government surveying cemetery readiness for flu outbreak. And how to bury millions in Illinois, Indiana, New York. That's just 3 states we got documented.
Our experts here at the CDC and across our government agree that the chances of an Ebola outbreak here in the United States are extremely low.
There's a lot of evidence linking the development of Ebola, and when it first began to show up on the scenes the last 40 years, to Western bioweapons laboratories that were on the Gold Coast, the western coast of Africa. And then by 2002, tens of millions of dollars were spent for a program called BioShield. And under the cover of creating cures for biological weapons or treatments, they built bioweapons labs all over the United States, including in populated areas, despite protest, like at the University of Texas in Galveston, right where hurricanes hit, and didn't even put the deadly pathogens in containment facilities underground. They did it in level 2 facilities. That's just like bringing Ebola-infected patients to general hospitals.
My concern is that do we have a bunch of little time bombs walking around the streets of America that are going to suddenly explode, and we're going to suddenly start having cases? And it certainly doesn't help, like Dr. Davis suggested, bringing in infected people, because none of us really trained for dealing with this level of infectious disease. It's not commonplace for us to down up and deal with patients of this caliber.
New estimates by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention are warning that the number of Ebola cases could reach 1.4 million by mid-January.
U.S. State Department orders 160,000 Ebola hazmat suits. Bulk purchases prompts concerns about spread of deadly epidemic. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention warned hospitals and doctors that now is the time to prepare. Obama says U.S. military to provide equipment, resources to battle Ebola epidemic in Africa, and now it could gestate for a lot longer period, making it more likely that it will end up getting into the United States.
Our efforts to help mobilize the international community to fight it, and the steps that we're taking to keep people here at home safe.
1 milliliter of Ebola-infected blood, if it is aerosolized, has the capability of infecting 10 million people.
Between the specialists they have on the ground in West Africa and here at headquarters, they've got hundreds of professionals who are working tirelessly on this issue.
In a speech to the United Nations member states at the beginning of September, MSF's international president signalled the failure of the current strategy for combating Ebola. No organisation, and that includes MSF, is equipped to deal with the explosion in the number of cases, the dozens of infected health workers, and collapse of the affected countries' health systems.
This is something that we take very seriously. As soon as there is an outbreak anywhere in the world of any disease that could have significant effects, the CDC is in communication with the World Health Organization and other multilateral agencies to try to make sure that we've got an appropriate response.
We have to stop it at the source in Africa.
Dr. Gottlieb, former Director of Medical Policy Development for the Food and Drug Administration, asserted that Ebola is likely to arrive in the U.S. and that if it does, the CDC will invoke powers to hold a healthy person against their will. Dr. Gottlieb also points at an executive order passed by Obama on July 31st, which allows for the detention of Americans who merely display signs of any respiratory illness.
The CDC has confirmed the first case of Ebola in the United States. Obviously, this is an unprecedented development. They admitted, they acknowledged that family members of the victim there in the Dallas hospital may also have been infected with the virus, as well as members of the community. And now we know that this victim, this Ebola victim, was active for several days with symptoms of the disease walking around the community. So the question remains, who else could have been infected?
Now to go back over those 4 days and figure out anybody that person may have had contact with. That's absolutely critical. It is absolutely crucial to do that to try and prevent other people from possibly spreading this virus.
Now they're saying 80 people are being monitored. This one person can affect up to 80 people. Meanwhile, the CDC wants to tell you that there's nothing going on, that everything's fine, there's nothing to worry about. Continue going to school, continue letting your child go out there. But the parents are saying no, the parents are pulling their kids out of the schools here because we know 5 children went to 4 of the local schools in the area.
We will contact anyone who we think has any likelihood of having had an exposure to the individual while they were infectious. At this point, that does not include anyone who might have traveled with him because he was not infectious at that time.
Why haven't the flights from West Africa been stopped from coming into America like Europe and France have done?
That's a question that's really not in my domain. We did not discuss that specific question.
People talk about, well, we shouldn't allow any flights in from Liberia. I mean, we in America, how dare we turn our backs on Liberia, given the fact that this is a country that was founded in the 1820s, 1830s because of American slavery.
We could be looking at hundreds of thousands of people infected, with profound political and economic and security implications for all of us.
Michael T. Osterholm, director of the Centers for Infectious Disease Research and Policy at the University of Minnesota, acknowledged in a recent New York Times op-ed that virologists are loath to discuss openly, but are definitely considering in private the possibility that Ebola has gone airborne. Top German virologist Jonas Schmidt-Kansast caused consternation recently when he suggested that the battle against Ebola in Sierra Leone and Liberia was lost and that the virus would eventually kill 5 million people.
Let all our neighbors know that we shall join with them to oppose aggression or subversion anywhere in the Americas. And let every other power know that this hemisphere intends to remain the master of its own house.
This is Alex Jones for InfoWarsLife.com. The latest in preparedness is now here. An electrically stabilized colloidal silver solution that can be added to both your home cabinet and preparedness pack alike. Concentrated to 30 parts per million in what has been dubbed the survival silver solution. The new InfoWars Life Silver Bullet Colloidal Silver is the answer for you and your family. And it's entirely free of toxic artificial additives that are loaded into many products. The InfoWars Life Silver Bullet Silver is so powerful that it is concentrated into a 2-ounce bottle and is not recommended for extended continual use. This is not a low-grade formula. We are working with one of the top laboratory manufacturers in the United States to bring you the best form of colloidal silver using electrical processes within a base of deionized water for your preparedness storage. For your home kitchen, purchase your bottle of InfoWarsLife.com Silver Bullet Colloidal Silver today and find other amazing supplements at InfoWarsLife.com.
Introducing the first proprietary oxygen-based intestinal cleanser, OxyPowder, backed by FDA-approved Phase 1, 2, and 3 clinical trials. All the toxins from the air, the food, the water, ultimately ends up in the gut or affects the gut. Take your health into your own hands and start cleansing your body today with OxyPowder. Secure your OxyPowder today at InfoWarsLife.com. That's InfoWarsLife.com.
Back in the late 1950s, when people demonized you and attacked you 100 times more than they attacked me, because all this stuff's coming true now, this guy was an icon who stood up against him, and he does 4 or 5 hours of radio every day warning the planet. And so I wanted, I know most of you know him, but I came to here, not just you, and not just to give a speech, but to talk to Dr. Stan Monteith. So I wanted to spend 15, 20 minutes crystallizing the fact that he's seen this huge awakening and where society's going, and for us to count the cost and decide which side of this equation we're on. Liberty or tyranny? You got the floor, you take it away.
Well, I'm not going to take very long because I think that Alex really is doing the most amazing job. You know, I've been at this for 48 years now, but I've never seen as much enthusiasm as I've seen in the last few years. And things are getting worse and worse. Now, don't believe them when they tell you that things are going to get better. That the housing market's going to stabilize? No, it's not. The housing market's going to continue to fall, and more people are going to continue losing their homes. They tell you that the jobs are coming back. The jobs are not coming back. They've been sent overseas, and they're going to stay there. Why are they going to stay there? Because there is a plan. Now, most people really don't know what the plan is, but it's called globalism. It's an organized effort to lower the living standards in the United States and raise the living standards throughout the world so we can have a one world government, a one world religion, and a one world ruler.
Within the next 4 years, we will see the emergence of a new international order.
The beginning of a new international order.
Good evening, everybody. President Obama and British Prime Minister Gordon today calling for a new world order to tackle our global economic crisis.
And one of the ways it will drive the change is through global governance and global agreements.
Is this global governance at last? Is it one world, the central bankers in charge? But aren't we all just living and dying for what the central banks do?
Of course we are. We are absolutely slaves to central banks.
Now, if you want to document this, it's all in something called the Earth Charter, written by Stephen Rockefeller, the nephew of David Rockefeller, by Mikhail Gorbachev, and by Maurice Strong. And there in point 10A of the Earth Charter, they say, we're going to have equitable distribution of wealth between nations. Now, how do you get equitable distribution of wealth between the United States and China? Why, you lower living standards in the United States, and you raise living standards in China and in India and all throughout the world. And this is really what's happening, but they cannot tell the American people because most of you are so selfish, you don't want to give up your home. You don't want to give up your pension. You don't want to give up your Social Security and your Medicare benefits and all the wonderful things that we have in this country. But you must understand, ladies and gentlemen, the America we have known has ceased to exist and will never exist again during our lifetime. But the one thing we can hope is that we're going to be able to preserve an element of freedom. Now, how are they sending our jobs overseas? Well, it's a process known as offshoring manufacturing. And what we do is we take a manufacturer and we say to them, look, you're paying 35% corporate income tax in the United States. How you'd like to not have to pay any taxes at all. You move your factory over to China. You don't have to pay any corporate taxes. You can keep that money. You can invest it throughout the world. You can set up new manufacturing in all sorts of countries. How many of you here, if you were offered that opportunity to make hundreds of millions of dollars, wouldn't take the opportunity? And that's what our great corporations are doing. Furthermore, they can get abundant labor. There's all sorts of labor over there, cheap labor. They don't have to put up with the bureaucracy, the harassment they have here. They do not have to actually pay unemployment insurance, workman's compensation insurance, FICA taxes. They're actually given loans. You can get a loan if you go over there. We're doing everything we can to encourage our corporations to move overseas. And of course, the reason they do that is because they can bring their products back in here because we don't have taxes. What we need to do, of course, is to protect our economy. Yes, it'd be nice to help the rest of the world, but first of all, we've got to save America. And anybody who talks about tariffs now is called a protectionist. Oh, you're a protectionist. Why don't you know if we put up tariffs, why we would have all sorts of people out of work? If we put up tariffs, we'd have tremendous trade deficits. Ladies and gentlemen, we have people out of work. The real unemployment is not 9.6%. It's close to 20%. if you use the U6 unemployment figures, which are put up by Bureau of Labor Statistics but never mentioned